Hey, gang, we're going to talk a little bit about martial law right after this. So, hey, guys, welcome to Woke with Wes. Got a little bit of something that's just kind of been bothering me a little bit, and I want to talk to you about it. With all this election fraud speculation that's going on and all of this concern, there are an awful lot of people who are begging for Trump to declare martial law. So let's talk a little bit about what martial law actually means. Should it be declared? Martial law is the imposition of direct military control of normal civil functions of society. So it's a suspension of civil law by government, especially in a response to a temporary emergency where civil forces are overwhelmed or in an occupied territory. So to simplify that, basically what happens, there's a national emergency or there's an insurrection, rebellion, an invasion, natural disasters, things of that nature. And a local, in the U.S., constitutionally speaking, the president with the consent of Congress, or the president and Congress, or state officials can actually declare martial law. They can declare a state of emergency and as a result impose certain restrictions on liberty, movement, speech. They can even suspend your writ of habeas corpus, which basically, if you don't know what habeas corpus refers to, unlawful detainment. So we saw that during World War II, where FDR locked up the Japanese in internment camps. We saw it in other countries throughout the world, where people who disagreed with government at the time were locked up and or killed. So, martial law is not something we necessarily want. So who can, we already talked about who can declare martial law. Let's talk about what the Constitution says about it. And it's very vague. Article 1, Section 9 of the Constitution basically states that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus shall not be suspended unless, in cases of rebellion, invasion, and public safety may require it. So it's kind of weird verbiage, but that's how it says it in the Constitution. So we already talked about habeas corpus. So if they can detain you through martial law, that's how it speaks to it. The only restriction to that, should martial law be declared, is the Posse Comitatus Act, which basically says the president needs the consent of Congress to have the U.S. military take military action on U.S. soil. So has martial law ever been declared in the U.S.? Yes, as a matter of fact, 68 times, but more on a local level, like Pearl Harbor in Hawaii during Pearl Harbor, the Battle of New Orleans, Whiskey Rebellion, which was before, that was in the early 1800s, Chicago Fire, San Francisco earthquake, smaller things like that. I believe in Katrina is basically under martial law. So the problems with martial law as it applies to your rights, as I've already alluded to, and I've already said, martial law isn't described or confined or limited in any way by the Constitution. And that's not me saying that. That comes from Bill Banks. He's a Syracuse professor of constitutional law and national security law. Another thing to worry about, if martial law is declared, they're essentially saying, whoever declares it, saying, I am the law. That's one person being the law, in essence. And that's not how liberty works, man. You can't work that way. You basically no longer have your God-given rights to speech, assembly, self-defense, or movement. That's what happens with martial law. So, why don't you want Trump to declare it? He's your guy. You voted for him. He's, in some conservatives' eyes, the savior of the modern America. So why don't you want him to declare martial law? Well, You give up your rights, as I mentioned. Even if you like Trump, no one person should hold such power. Don't be willing to give up your rights so easily. Fight for what's right, but not by giving up your rights. Plus, the election is technically not, election fraud is not a national emergency. It's not an insurrection. It may be a silent revolt in some ways if you honestly believe all of this election fraud speculation that's going on. But it's not an immediate threat to your person or this country. Long term, yeah, it can definitely be argued that Biden and Harris are dangerous for this country. I have no doubt about that. But to go to the extreme of declaring martial law in the face of what has been deemed a legitimate election, Homeland Security called it the safest and most accurate election of all times. We'll see. Here's something else to think about. Trump is older, and he won't be here forever. If he were to declare martial law, what's the end game? When's it going to end? If he should declare it without an end in sight, because of election issues, it could be years of dictatorial rule that we live under, which there's no way your personal liberties can survive something like that. But if Trump should pass or die during the martial law, how is his successor chosen if the reason he declared martial law was because of a faulty election? You're not going to elect a new successor because you don't trust the election process. So I say all of that to say this, man. Martial law is scary stuff. That's moving from a republic who has some great flaws that need to be fixed to being ruled by a dictator. You're talking about statism. You're talking about increasing the size of government exponentially because they have to enforce martial law. So think about that and be woke about that. Liberty should be preserved above all things. And the best way for you to make a difference is to start locally. You've got to change the minds and hearts of those around you. You have to make them love liberty as much as you do. So with that being said, I'm Wes, and I hope you're being woke in the right way. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy New Year's if I don't do another Woke with Wes between now and New Year's. But preserve liberty above all things. Hey, if you're a liberty-minded business owner, we're looking for sponsors. Our plan after the first year is to grow this podcast exponentially. We enjoy doing it. We have so much. We receive a lot of great positive feedback from people, and we think we're on to something with this thing. And we'd love for you to come along with us on this ride. So if you're a liberty-minded business, you can reach out to me personally at wes@wesherndon.com. It'll be in the below so you can see it. And let's move forward and promote liberty together. Hey guys, I'll see you next time on Woke with Wes.